Your rig is where you work, where you rock out. Your rig is your livelihood. So when that DPF light comes on, give your rig the respect it deserves. As for Road Warrior, stronger seals, better manufacturing, and it's made of metal that lasts. Less downtime and more miles on the road so you can haul longer. Respect the rig. Become a Road Warrior.
Welcome to The Long Haul, the podcast dedicated to empowering small carriers and owner-operators to drive their business forward. I'm your host, Adam Wingfield, bringing you insights from industry leaders, real-world success stories, and strategies to help you navigate the road to profitability. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your fleet to the next level, this is a show where trucking meets opportunity. So buckle up, it's time to go the distance. Welcome back to The Long Haul, the podcast that brings you the freight talk that actually matters to the folks behind the wheel and behind the scenes. Today's guest is somebody who got freight in her blood. She is a second-generation logistics leader, the CEO of Knichel Logistics, and one of the most respected voices in the brokerage space, especially when it comes to building relationships that last between brokers and carriers. We're diving into what brokers really want, what carriers should be doing to stand out, and why legacy, transparency, and grit still matter in this industry, maybe now more than ever. And before we dive in, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the show. Hit up www.freightwaves.com/playbook to subscribe to our free newsletter where we break down the market for owner-operators and small carriers with no fluff involved. Without further ado, welcome Miss Kristy Knichel. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
And glad to have you on board. Before the show, we were kind of just talking a little bit and, we were talking a little football. And just before we get started, we got a big time Steelers fan on the show today.
That's right. Long Steelers fan too.
But for a reason, though. For a reason. You're from the area, so obviously that's for a reason. But since we're talking about, where you're from, for those unfamiliar, can you share your journey? Can we take it back to when, Kristy was just twinkling and trying to figure out things? Where did that journey come from? Walk me back as far as you can walk us back.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love starting with this point of graduating high school. Tried a little bit of college and decided that I ultimately wanted to purchase a pizza shop that I was running because the gentleman wanted to sell it. I worked two jobs actually at the time, two different pizza shops, but I approached my dad about this and thought it was a great idea. I was 19 years old and he told me that he had owned a pizza shop in a bar back in the day and that's not the path that I would want to go down, which I had no clue he even owned a pizza shop before I existed. So, basically said, you don't want to work nights and weekends. You're going to make $40,000 a year, maybe $50,000 a year. And at 19, I thought this was fantastic, great opportunity. But he convinced me to not take that opportunity and to come work for him. I didn't completely know everything that he did. But I decided to do that. I quit one of my jobs. I actually quit college and went to work for him when I was 19 years old. And that's how my journey started.
Wow. So from 19 years old, as a teenager, that kind of where that journey started for you. Now, but Knichel's been around for a while though, right?
Yeah. So Knichel was established in 2003, but I started working for my father in 97, and he was an agent for Cornerstone Systems at the time out of Memphis, Tennessee. He was one of the founding members of that company. And my dad had been in the industry a very long time. He started working for the railroad actually in New Jersey, and then he moved to Pittsburgh with the railroad. When they wanted him to move to Omaha, that's when he said, well, I'm going to stay here in Pittsburgh and go on the other side, which was, being an agent for a company. Back in the day, it was like National Piggyback, MCS, Fort Pitt Consolidators. I don't know if you know those names, but they were big back in the day. They don't exist today anymore, but yeah.
So always been on the brokerage side. So that brokerage thing has been in the blood.
Yes, it absolutely has. Actually, in our family, I have a cousin who actually owns a trucking company in New Jersey, does work in the port of New Jersey and has a warehouse. And So it's definitely in the blood. There's a lot of family working in the business.
I love that. I love like when legacy is involved, no matter where it goes. Like I love watching like legacy as it progresses. And sometimes even when you said, "Hey, I want to go into pizza. I don't want nothing to do with this whole freight stuff." But like it always comes full circle though. Like, ultimately, for the most part, most of the times it's going to come full circle. So I think that that's pretty cool. Now, as we kind of just progress, you got into the business. And, what did those first couple of years look like for you? Was there something, when you started, was there something that you noticed then that was kind of the norm versus to progressing to now what you see is kind of just obsolete? What would that be based on the time that you've been in the business? Because you've been in it for a long time.
Yeah, I think I'm in my 28th year.
Yeah.
So, I would say like when I started, there was only 5 people that worked for my father at the time, and all we did was ship intermodal freight. And I would say one of the things, actually a couple of things that I did that really doesn't exist today was faxing the tracking to customers every morning by 8:30, or every shipment that we moved, I had to call on the telephone and type in the container number and then type in the information and then move to the next one. And that's not how tracking is done today, or even giving the reports to our customers. A very manual process back then, but obviously the business was a lot smaller. So it kind of, to me, was just like, oh, this is interesting, how you do it. But it definitely took a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of manual work. And that does not exist today, the way that we do things.
And the thing is that the technology has definitely changed things on how we progress. But there's one thing that I don't think technology has changed, and that's building relationships and how we interact with people.
Yeah, now I think that's a huge thing. So early on, I would say probably my 3rd year in, my dad actually started taking me on sales calls. I would go visit customers with him and our carriers. Mm-hmm. Every state that we went to, we always had several days of meeting with our carriers. So I would say the relationship part has actually, I felt like it was almost stronger back then than maybe it is today. I feel like maybe just because the market we've been in for a few years, I feel like some of the relationships, we still have customers that have been with us the whole 28 years I've been here. From a relationship standpoint, and carriers. Some of the carriers that we work with today, I dispatched when I first worked for my dad initially. So I do think relationships are important no matter what, but there's going to be certain companies, I think, in carriers that maybe those relationships don't always follow through. Mm-hmm. Where you have a relationship with a customer, for example, for 8 years, and now, they're just looking at price and not the partnership and the relationship there, because that's what's coming from the top down. And those situations, kind of suck, but I still feel like you have to be focused on continuing to build those. It's probably more important now than it was maybe even back then to really have a really good relationship and not just a fly-by-night type relationship. So I would say even now it's really reaching out more, having those conversations, really trying to be that partner on both sides with the customer and the carrier.
I'm going to be honest with you, Kristy. And, I think that you brought up a very, very good point. And we're kind of around, from the same environment. I started in the business in 2000. You were just a couple of years before me. But one thing that I can tell you, and this is my opinion, just because this is, what we see. I think the relationship piece has taken a hit because of how society has changed so much. And the reason why I say that is because, like, if you remember, like, back in the day, like, the only way you booking a load is picking up a phone. There wasn't no bid and book. There was none of that stuff. It was like, okay, it was so much less technology. But now we become so socially distant, and we're digging for more technology, and our expectations are so different. It's like, I don't know. What do you think? I just feel like society is socially distant these days.
Yeah, you know what? Now that you say it that way, I agree with you 100%, because that is how it was back in the day. And even though email existed, it wasn't used that much, to be honest. Mm-hmm. You did pick up the phone. And my dad, he was insistent on picking up the phone. If this phone even rang here twice and someone didn't pick it up,
problem.
Yeah, pack your stuff and get out the door, basically, But I do agree with you. It's become easier to kind of sit behind that computer and send emails instead of picking up that phone or seeing people in person anymore. And I think it's even gotten worse, though, since I hate bringing up COVID, but I do feel like it's gotten worse. Yeah, it's harder to even see customers, even the ones like I just mentioned we've had for over 28 years, because my dad had some of these before I started working for him. But sometimes even those customers, like my brother's going on a trip soon, and several of them, just they don't have time. And, it's like you're traveling the whole way across the country. So you don't want to go out there and not be able to meet these people. And again, you only have so much time to set it up. So that has been more challenging than it has in the past. And I also noticed even this past year, I made a trip to NorCal to visit some other customers, and 2 of them canceled while we were out there as well. And it's kind of like I'm all the way across the country. And so I agree with you. It's definitely gotten easier, I think, to avoid that relationship and continuing to push that forward with technology.
So let me ask you this. You talk about going to go visit customers. From your standpoint, like, hey, what does that look like? So the carriers that are listening to this, what do you do when you go visit a customer?
So we go visit the customer. Obviously, we ask, how are we doing for them? Are there, things that we can do better for them? Are there other opportunities that we're not seeing that we can take a look at? And then, of course, we talk about our network and what we're good at and other areas that might fit. One thing we like to do is just sell what we're good at. I'm not good at everything, and we don't want everything. Mm-hmm. So really talking about that. And then I will say one of the things we talk about is our carrier relationships, and talking about how deep a lot of those carrier relationships go and how long that they've been. Like, I'm shocked that I can sit here and say today how long that we've had some of these customers, but also carrier relationships at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Now, the crazy thing is that like, and that's one of the like behind the curtain things. And the reason why I love hearing both sides of perspective. Obviously, I'm on the carrier side, coming from a carrier perspective. But I love like opening the platform up to hear the brokerage side of things, just to really, so that we can really truly put a lens on the importance and what that third party connection makes. Because without the broker, this thing wouldn't be moving. The industry wouldn't move because of the specific niche and the specific things that brokers do. I want to talk about you a little bit, and I want to talk about what brokers really want. Okay. And so, just straight talk from your perspective, and this is maybe something that we hear all the time. So I want you to think about the things that you don't hear all the time when we say, what do brokers actually want from carriers? Now I'm not talking about like, oh, you got to be, safe rated and communication. Tell me what you really, really, if there was something to say, oh, this is what we want from you. What is that?
Say honesty.
Oh my God. You mean to say that I can't say, oh yeah, I'm on the way to the pickup and I'm like, maybe like, instead of being 5 miles away, I'm like 150 miles away?
No. I know that that's a thing, right? And I would say, especially when I was younger, but I know things happen and you can't change that. But I think, can you really handle this business? Is this a good area for you? Is it the right business for you? I do have carriers a lot of time that they'll be hauling business for us. And this just happened a few weeks ago, got a phone call. And the carrier's like, hey, I've been losing money on this business for months trying to show you how I can do the job and get in the door. Can you give me some other business that maybe I can make money on? Mm-hmm. Well, the problem was I gave him other business to help him out with what he was picking up. So he was delivering loads that you could reload the containers for example, on the intermodal side. And, I feel like it's not my job to make sure you're making money. So why did you quote that going in that way? And then when I gave you the opportunity to give you more containers to then reload, then after, I think it was like 2 weeks, then they decided that wasn't working. So they didn't even want to do the business. And then you walked away from it. But now you're asking me for more business. Yeah. But then it came down to a rate. And at the end of the day, I can tell you we are a broker that does not push our carriers down on rate. Yes, there's a time we have to discuss it, but I'm not going to switch a carrier out that's doing a good job over $50. Yeah. Like, that's just how we look at the business, because the carriers, in my eyes, are extremely important. Without the carriers doing what they do, they're an extension of us. And if they don't perform, we don't perform. So we all have to be on the same page. So when it comes to honesty, it's, I think, being upfront about, can you really do it? Like, don't come in and say you can do it, give me this price. And now you're saying I need to take a price increase, which is roughly almost $100 increase, which is what they were asking for, just so that they can be profitable. And now I'm in a position that I have to find another carrier to come in and take your place because you just can't make money doing this, nor can you do the other business that we gave you. And you didn't tell me it was priced back then. You gave us a price, and now this price is obviously not working because that's what he told me then, but he didn't tell us that when he pulled the business.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, one of the challenges that we face as a broker on the carrier side.
But what was his, like, so, okay, I get it. Yesterday's price is not today's price. Things happen.
Right.
Operational costs change. What was his thing behind it? Why, what was his reasoning behind the change?
I think it was really just what he said to me specifically was that he wanted to do business with me for years and he wanted an opportunity. We gave him an opportunity, but he went in so low that he didn't realize, I guess initially he wasn't going to make money based on the business. Now I can tell you when we did use him, there's a couple ramps we have other carriers go to. It seems like they weren't as familiar with some of the equipment types, things like that. We worked through those bumps, but ultimately it was really just him being aggressive. It's no different than me going in. I landed an account this past year. We went in super aggressive. We don't know how the business is truly going to pan out and if we're going to even make money, to be honest, as well, right? But if I'm not making money, that's on me, and we're going to suck it up for the 6 months that we quoted it. And I can tell you we made some adjustments. We were able to get it to not where it needed to be, but a lot better because we figured out how to operate it better. But I'm not going to go back to the customer and say, hey, Mr. Customer, I'm losing money on this. And, I need to either get a rate increase or whatnot. Like, we don't do that here. We have to wait it out until the bid. I guess if you've done such a poor job, you could just drop out of the business, but that's not the mindset we go in with.
Yeah. And the thing is that, and that's not professional anyway. If you're going to commit to something, you can commit to it. As a business owner, you should do it on either side. So that wouldn't be the right thing to do. So when you look at that, what are the top mistakes you see small carriers make when they're trying to build long-term partnerships with you, just like you just talked about? What are some of the mistakes that you notice that they make?
I mean, obviously that's one of them. And I think also just not having more dialogue about, again, I guess just going back to what their needs truly are. How long can you do this? Or just, being able to be open about their capacity. I can't tell you how many times, especially the smaller carriers, that's a lot of what we use. They say, hey, I can do 10 a week for you. And then we start the business. We just have had this on our truckload side where we have drop business. A lot of carriers like drop business. The business fluctuation changed just a little bit. So there wasn't as many moves. Maybe it was like supposed to be 6 a week, went down to 3 a week, but it had to do with the tariffs and freight not coming in. But the carrier knew that up front. And I would say, the carrier not asking questions like, well, what if this does change? What if the volume goes down? Or what if the volume goes up? I think those are good questions to talk about. I mean, I will say on our side, those are questions we should be asking too. Can you support it? Because we did replace a carrier with this new carrier, but I can tell you that conversation was had. And then they went in, did a great job the first 2 weeks, and then just lack of communication. They don't want to pick up the phone to tell us the bad news. I want to hear the bad news because we have to still give it to our customer. And I think the challenge we had with this particular carrier, and again, it's just fresh in my mind because it happened recently, we couldn't even get the head person on the phone to even discuss why this was a problem. What can we do to fix it? Do we just need to pull you out? So I think some of these carriers run from those issues instead of like, let's just talk about it. And again, I don't know if it's because of the way certain brokers have treated them in the past. We just want the honest conversation so that we can help them. If they're not a fit for the business, that's fine. I get it. But we need to know so we can help our customer, at the end of the day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Trucking Hub. Now listen, if you're still bouncing between 5 different logins just to run your trucking business, you're already behind. Trucking Hub is built by a carrier for carriers, and it puts everything under one roof, whether it be dispatch, safety, maintenance, and even accountant and a driver app. Their dispatch runs on PC Miler and Copilot navigation so the miles are right the first time. Now, the ELD is FMCSA certified, tamper-proof, and trusted since 2017. And if you want to keep it all in one lane, you can even roll in company phones, texting, video, and fax backed by nationwide LTE. Bottom line, this is the kind of system that you spend less time hopping and more time hauling. Plans start at just $29 per truck, no contracts, no hidden fees, and you can try it for free for 30 days. Check them out at their website and get your time back.
Okay.
You know, and the thing is, Kristy, the crazy thing that you mentioned that is that, but it's still, to me, it still goes back to the society as a whole. And I'm going to tell you why. We were a lot more apt to have authentic conversations, and we were a lot more apt to resolve issues with the party that you're doing business with. Now you fast forward 20 years, because it's so easy to just go to the next thing. I see a load pop up on a load board. Well, I booked a load with Knichel, but then you know what? 5 minutes later, this load pops up on the load board. It's $4 a mile. You know what, Kristy? I'm sorry, I had a tire blowout. I can't. It's just so easy to do that now, and I think that that's what the biggest issue behind that is.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I agree with you there. And I do think it's become almost more of a transactional relationship.
That's right.
Yeah, versus like really building that partnership. And again, I mean, to your point, I do think from the society, the market, like all these different things have maybe made these people just operate different than how they used to. But you are right, it is very different now. Because I think poor communication, it wasn't as bad back in the day because you had to pick up the phone.
You had to.
Regardless. And that's how it was. But yeah, I mean, even service failures, I mean, you know how this goes. I mean, a lot of times the customer's like, oh yeah, how many, blown out tires and this and that. But at the end of the day, it happens. Let's just talk about it, be honest, or say your driver just slept in. If that's what happened, just
tell the truth. Tell the truth.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think because of some of the way brokers probably behave with the carriers, maybe that also causes, I don't know, maybe from your side, I don't know if that's something you see, but
I'll give you that, as a default. But here's what I'll say. I heard this story. I don't know, and forgive me if that person that's listening, forgive me if I don't give you credit for the story, because I really don't know whose story this was. I can't remember. But I was listening to an episode of something where this lady was saying how she had a carrier that said, hey, you know what? I had a blowout, and so I'm not going to be able to handle this load, or whatever the circumstance became. But when they sent the picture of the blowout to the lady who was the broker, right? She sent the picture, and the lady looked at the picture and she was like, well, let me do a Google image search. When she did a Google image search, it was somebody else's blowout from like 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like now, man, it's like trust erosion is so prevalent. And then especially in situations like that, man, come on, y'all.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I do think, the culture part of it, the relationship part, like the transactional, 100%. I know, again, carriers walking away from contractual business, maybe because they misquoted it. But I think the other thing, too, is resistance to technology.
100%.
Yeah. So I think, and I understand part of that, too, especially with the older generation, but also some of these smaller carriers, I don't know that they can afford to, right? Like there's been a lot of M&A in our industry, and the bigger companies are getting bigger. So it's harder for these guys to compete.
Yeah, yeah. And I agree with that. And in your eyes, what separates a one and done transactional carrier from one you would put on freight week after week for you?
I would say someone who communicates really well, whether it's good or bad. They work with you on where the pricing needs to be. And it's not just with us. It's them also being honest about what they need to make. And again, being honest about that wiggle room that you might have and coming to a common ground together so you both win the business.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, both sides want the business, but you can't be greedy on either side. It's like, how do we work together better to ensure that we do this? Now, My brother handles a lot of our procurement on the truckload dedicated side. I would say 70% of our business on the truckload is dedicated contract drop trailer business. So that's business with carriers he's built relationships with for a long time too. And I will say they're willing to go to bat for us and do extra things for us because we treat them well. We pay them on time. Even if they say, hey, we need extra money for this, for something that happened, when you have that good relationship and communication that's happening and you understand what each role is, I think it just comes together a lot easier. And we've seen that business grow tremendously over the past several years in particular, and especially with some of those same repeat carriers that we're able to use in other lanes. Because again, when you have that good working relationship and you can be honest about where you need to be, and again, not taking business, losing money, hoping to prove yourself, at the end of the day, I don't think any carrier should do that. You need to make money. So what does that have to be? Tell me your bottom line so we can both be in a good position. Because again, this carrier, just going back to that briefly, you calling me and telling me that you're losing money, moving my freight. I mean, what am I supposed to say to that? I mean, I feel bad, but that's not my problem.
Yeah. No, in all actuality though, but two, if you really want to get real serious with it, Kristy, some of them don't really even know what their overall operational costs are. And when I
Right.
say that, I'm saying some. So before anybody takes this clip and tries to send it as Adam says, they all, I'm going to tell you some don't know your true operational cost. You may have an idea, but you don't know that that operational cost is so fluid and it's based on your overall operation, and what works today may not work tomorrow. So it's important to stay on top of your business so that way you can position yourself to have those long-term relationship conversations. But most importantly, I can't agree with something that, hey, I'm going to move a lane for you, Kristy. And then all of a sudden I'm gonna say, oh yeah, this is not making me no money. You should have did that when you was doing the calculations up front, not on the backside.
Right. Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a big issue because even now, I mean, I'm sure you see it in the stats. I mean, what carriers are taking freight for right now, it's like, how are they're not making money, some of them.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, I don't understand that side of it, but in the same token, I think having that real honest conversation about where you need to be, can we make this work together so we both make something?
Yeah. And you mentioned something and I'm about to hit you with another like big one. When you hear about, hey, it's a tough market right now, guess who's making all of the money? They say it's the brokers. They said that the brokers are making money hand over fist. And there's a lot of talk in the industry about broken trust between brokers and carriers. And with that, this because you've been in the business long enough to know that it goes just like this with the cycles, right? That trust goes back and forth. When everybody's eating, it's shh. When
Yeah.
everybody, when the carriers are struggling, man, Capitol Hill, like, hey, brokers are making the minimum of 40% margin. Like I've seen it all. So do you think that the relationship based on how long you've been in the business and what you've seen, do you think the relationship between brokers and carriers is repairable?
I think that it is. I think we need to try. I think the challenge is there's a lot of bad brokers out there, but there's also a lot of good brokers out there. And I think that's the challenge. A good friend of mine that's a truck driver, I mean, she talks to me about it all the time. And depending on the company that she has to work with, I mean, she tells me how the people, talk to her and things like that. So, there's that level of respect that just isn't there. And I don't know why that's not there. I'm very clear with our staff here on how they handle carriers. It's like a customer, in my opinion. Like they're just as important, if not more important, because without the carrier, you can't get your freight picked up or delivered. So I will say though, it's interesting you say that though about, right now it's like the broker's making all this money. There might be some that are out there trying to price gouge. I can tell you, we're certainly not doing that. And anyone that I've talked to, they're not doing well right now either, like a lot of the carriers that are out there. I will tell you this year, we're actually recovering. The last 2 years, we had a significant loss. And now it's like rebuilding and we're starting to do better. It's nowhere near where it needs to be. And in fact, we just did 2 bids where customers were expecting decreases and we're getting increases. So it's really hard. I think in general all around, and I really hope that we can fix this broker carrier situation because it's so crucial to the industry and all of our businesses to work together, not against each other.
I totally agree. And, from your perspective, and this is going to be a 2-part question. From your perspective, what can brokers do better to earn trust from the small carrier community? Because I'm going to tell you from a small carrier community what small carriers expect on the broker side.
Okay. So you don't want to tell me first?
So the word broker transparency comes out a lot. And that comes out, broker transparency comes as for some, it's like the smoking gun for everything, right? Broker transparency is going to fix safety. It's going to fix capacity. It's going to make sure that everybody's making money on that side. And we ride off into the sunset. And to me, from what I hear, is that from a trust standpoint, the first thing that the broker community can do is that when you tender that load, you tell me how much money you're making.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'll tell you this. My company, we don't make a whole lot. We don't make what some of these other brokers might because of maybe the density or the volume that they have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem doing that. We have actually had customers where we share that data because they've asked and we just felt like, well, why not? At the end of the day, they're going to see what we make off of moving their freight. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that builds trust. And having that honesty there, it's building the value that you have in your relationship, not just the load, but having the relationship that you can be trustworthy. I can tell you right now, I don't know what the average margin, well, most of the companies I know, say in brokerage that are moving freight will say 15% is what you should be making on a truckload. We don't make 15%. Even as a whole company, I'm not afraid to say that, we're around 10%, maybe 11 for everything. And that's a very slim margin to run. I'm running 100 million in revenue through this company. Mm-hmm. So that's a very small number at the end of the day. So I think that I know there's a lot of people against the transparency part, but in the same token, I know there's opportunities where you can make more money on certain shipments, certain time of year, or whatever it may be. And that's going to happen. And it should happen on both sides. Like right now is a shipper market. But like you mentioned, like during, I guess, I say when things are bad, like COVID or there's chaos and craziness, that's when we and carriers both tend to make our money. Now, the last 3 years has not really, or 2.5 years really hasn't been the case. But I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem because we're not raking carriers over the coal, making 30% margins or even 20% margins. And I think that carriers need to understand that not every company or brokerage is the same in how their philosophy is. I think in these situations, which I think is more important for the carriers to have more conversations with different brokers.
Yeah.
But I also know the big brokers that are out there, for the smaller carriers, sometimes they might have more freight to give out versus a smaller company during a time like this, where they're kind of forced to use some of these bigger brokers that they don't necessarily want to work with, but they have to get the load.
Yeah, you got to keep the wheels moving. At the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do at the end of the day. I just think, I think it's just so crazy though, Kristen, is like just seeing that during certain times, broker transparency has been one of those things. Because if you remember, if you know the Motor Carrier Act and the reason behind the broker transparencies, transactions were way different back in the 80s than they were now. Like you only had a handful of brokers back then. There was no load boards. There was none of that stuff. It was just, obviously it was much more, I hate to use the word transactional, but it was much more transactional at a smaller level, where now it's like blown up. Like it is like exploded. The amount of loads that get posted on a load board between DAT and truck stop, it would blow your mind on a daily basis. So when you think about broker transparency and you think about trust, from a carrier perspective, it's like, hey, how can I trust that you're not taking this $1,000 load that you're paying me how can I trust that you're not taking $400 out of that load? How do I know that you're only making $150 or whatever that may look like? And then from a trust perspective, if you're not making that kind of money, like, well, just show me that you're not making that kind of money and then we can move on. I guess that's how some
Yeah.
carriers feel.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely understand where they're coming from too, because again, there's all these different situations that there's the market rate, right, that you get from DAT and Sonar and all these different sources that are out there. And depending on a carrier in the market they're in, I mean, I've seen it where some carriers can move that shipment $500 less than your typical carrier because they're in that backwoods already.
Yeah.
Maybe they're already delivering there. So you can get a better rate. And in those situations, yeah, you might be able to make more margin, say on the broker side. But I also think, on the carrier side, I don't know that they're making a ton of money either on the freight that they're moving. I would assume it's maybe around the same that maybe I'm talking about. I don't know.
Yeah.
What those margins might be. But I do think there's brokers that take advantage of it. And there's ones that we just want a fair price. And at the end of the day, if we can't win, same with the carrier, then neither one of us win. And I can give you an example. Like, we do business with brokers that don't ship intermodal, but we'll do intermodal for them because they don't do that world, and they have to go through someone like us to ship. And their mindset is, oh, I'm going to put 15%, 20% fee on that. Mm-hmm. And we have to tell them, like, this is not like truckload, even on that side. You can't put a fee like that on there. Like, the average fee on intermodal is typically, I would say on average, 7 to 8%. But there's some customers that are 3%, 5%, and you need to get volume to make that up. And
yeah,
I know it sounds crazy, but that's just how it is. And again, I will just say we're very cognizant of what that margin is. And for us in the world we play in most, which is a lot of intermodal, it's tough for us because we're up against the asset carriers that are sometimes $300 or $400 cheaper than us. And the customer will say, how are they so much cheaper? Well, they own their own assets. They have their own drayage. We don't. And some of the density. So that's some of the challenges we're up against, but it doesn't mean that they're making more money than we are or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I don't necessarily see a problem going back to the transparency part, because at the end of the day, as long as everyone's making something that they need to make, like whatever that minimum is, then we all win.
There you go. And shifting gears just a little bit, as a woman leading a logistics business, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Kristy, when I first started driving a truck, back in the early 2000s, man, it would be like, wow, there's a lady driving. It's like one of those things where, like, and I'm just being honest, you just didn't see women in the industry, like, period. Like, you might have a driver. I have never had a female driver manager or anything. I had a couple of dispatchers that were females, but you never see women like leading charges, like, being like at the head of things. So as a woman leading a logistics business, how have you approached leadership differently, especially because you've spanned a couple of different decades when it comes down to the changes, right? So what advice from your perspective would you give to women trying to break into transportation today versus yesterday?
Yeah, I think it's easier today, obviously, than it was when I was younger and started 28 years ago. I think the biggest thing is to have a voice, speak up, and be part of the conversation. That was one of the biggest issues I had when I came in. I'd be in a room of 100 people from the railroad, and I was the only woman. And to this day, I'm probably one of two women still, other than a couple from the railroad.
Right.
So it's great to see a lot more women that have come into this industry. And I think they just need to make sure that they speak up, they don't give up, and continue to just push forward. Because eventually when I found my voice and I started even asking for help. One of the things I'd love to say is, my dad put me in the CEO role, didn't really allow me to fully execute that role initially, but didn't really guide me on what I'm supposed to do. And I Googled, like, what does a CEO do? Like, I just figure it out, So I think it's ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions as well, and just to push yourself forward.
That's awesome. And as we kind of get to a close, and I really want to focus, kind of like on the outer perspective on where you see the future of small fleets going. Where do you see the future of small fleets going? Like, what's your advice to an owner operator who wants to become more than just a name on a load board, who want to be more than just, a carrier that's calling to, to fill a vacancy for you? Like, where do you see the future of small fleets? Do you see consolidation? Do you see like, oh my God, there's a shift to automated? What do you see?
So I do see consolidation, and I hate saying that because I don't necessarily want to see that.
Sure.
But I do think that what these companies could do is, you said it earlier, make sure you know the cost of your trucks that you're putting out there, and then build those relationships. I don't care if you have to call 200, 300, whatever brokerages to find the right ones to work with. And not just brokers, but if you can't do it that way, going into customers direct and building that relationship. Because some of the carriers I've talked to, I feel like that's something that maybe they don't feel comfortable with, going into a particular customer and trying to be direct with a customer. I think that's important that they do that, but they also try to find the right brokerages and don't think that just because you have some bad ones that they're all the same.
The thing is that it goes back to what you and I talked about, and you brought it up earlier. It's like some people just don't even know how to say hello.
Yes.
Like the basic, like, so I give you an example before we head out. Like I was listening to some call scenarios, and I was just listening to how people call brokers for loads. It's like it'd be first thing Monday morning, broker's like, hi, this is Kristy with Knichel. Hey Kristy, this is Adam. I'm calling on load 345 going from Charlotte to Minneapolis. Is it still available? Like, damn, no hello. How you doing? Did you have a good
Right.
weekend? Like, hope you're doing well. Like, what happened to that? Like, we just don't care. It's just all transactions.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's a really good point. Have a personal type conversation or feel that makes them feel like, oh, this person cares.
And the thing is that when you have a conversation with somebody, when you have a conversation with somebody and they actually feel that you care and they feel that you value them, then guess what? Number one, you've already broken the ice. You've already lowered my guard a little bit, so I can actually have a little bit of that T word, a little trust, because she seems like a cool person. She said, "Hey, how's your day? Man, it looks like it's been. Where you at? Oh, it's rain, man. It look like y'all had some snow. Like make it personable. Like stop making everything so transactional. Stop getting on the load board, calling Knichel and saying, "Hey, look, I'm just calling on boom, boom, boom. What's going on? Is it still available?" No, like, hey, how you doing, Chris? You doing? I know you probably getting inundated with calls on this one. I just want to make sure it's still available. I just want to know how you were doing today. Just make it a conversation and stop being so
Yeah.
transactional. And I think that's one of the things that can help build trust.
Yeah, I agree 100% because again, that you're going to have a different take when someone says, "How was your weekend? How's your day going so far?"
Yeah.
Then you start the conversation. Then you feel like someone actually cares behind that phone, that you can maybe start to build a relationship with. It's a lot different. So I agree with that 100%.
And you know what that else builds? That also builds that, hey, okay, I moved this load. Me and Kristy had a good conversation and I moved the load. I communicated like she wanted me to. I was on time. I did everything I wanted, I was supposed to do. I followed up with her after the load. And guess what? Now Christy's like, hey, you know what? That Adam guy was pretty cool. Like, hey, I got one of my customers and he lives in Charlotte. Hey, Adam, I got one of my customers, and I know we've been done business for a long time, but I got one of my customers, man. They open up about 10, 11 more loads a week. I didn't know if it's something that you might be interested in. That's going to go to me before it goes to the guy that was a complete a-hole and just calling just to make it a transaction. So that's why I
Yeah.
think it's so important. Like, because at the end of the day, you're still a person, regardless if your name is
Yeah.
CEO or broker or whatever you want to call, or, carrier consult, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, you're still human. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I can tell you too, talking to my other friend that's a driver, one of the things she said is she called a company asking for a specific person that she worked with, and
Mhm.
he's not available. What can I help you with? And she's like, well, I prefer to talk to this person because he's already helped me out. And the woman, refused to, well, I'm just going to have to hang up with you. Then she called back again, got someone else. They wanted to help her, but they were not about trying to send her to the person to leave a voicemail. They were about themselves,
Wow.
probably because the way their incentive program is built or whatever. And
Uh-huh.
she's like, I don't want my freight going to this person. That's why I asked for this person.
Uh-huh.
And she got really frustrated the way that they talked to her. And again, it's both sides. It's both sides giving a little bit to be human at the end of the day.
And that's the biggest lesson out of today. And I'm so glad that you brought that perspective. And that's why I say I love having the other side, having conversations with both sides and keeping that conversation open. So, big thanks to you, Kristy, for joining us and laying down the truth about broker carrier partnerships, leadership, everything that comes down the line when it causes to move the industry forward. Listen, if you're a small carrier or owner who's tired of feeling that you're just another dot on the load board, go back and listen to this again, because this conversation, especially from Kristy's perspective, gave the blueprint on what needs to happen, right? Let's be more personal. Let's be human. And remember that relationships move freight. Relationships move freight all day long, not just rates. And if you want good freight, you got to be the good freight that you want to be, at the end of the day. And that means you got to be the person that you want to be, and the results will matter to you. If this episode made you think, it made you, get mad or whatever, hit like, share, and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to. Make sure that you're signed up for our weekly newsletter at www.freightwaves.com/the playbook. That's where we break this kind of insight stuff down every week for folks that need it. And Kristy, if anybody wants to be involved with Knichel, they out of the Pittsburgh area, or if they would just want to build a relationship with a broker that they feel like, they can get a good vibe with, how do they get in contact with you?
So you can email Knichel@KnichelLogistics.com. We are on LinkedIn. We are on, or we have a website as well that has some information on it, but definitely reach out on one of those two or send me an email.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know you was extremely busy, and I know you had to carve some time out because you was in the process of having to go visit a customer, but you're like, you know what? Hang on. I got you. I'm going to go ahead and let me talk to the people, and then I'm going to take care of the customer afterwards. So we appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
You have a good one, and everybody, to the folks that listen, we'll see you on the next one.